Hi, this is Katie Nix,
This is Suzanne Sentman.
and we're here to talk to you about retaining your top talent. What we'd like to do today is share with you some of our programs that we have here at McKonly and Asbury, as well as sharing some ideas that other small to medium-sized businesses have done who won Best Places to Work in PA. And then we'd like to spend a large portion of our time talking about stay interviews with a little bit of a twist and perspective to gain valuable feedback from employees in your company. For some of you, these topics may be familiar, but we hope to provide some good perspective and ideas that you can hopefully apply to your organization. Specifically, we're going to be talking about inclusion and culture before an employee starts. This is, we feel, one of the critical pieces that a lot of companies overlook. This is where you can include an employee on upcoming events, perhaps introduce them to a person that they're going to be working with for their first day, maybe a company ambassador, a buddy, a mentor, things along those lines. Onboarding experience is critical. Any article that you read, all the research that's out there, they'll tell you that it starts also with the onboarding process. And funny thing is, we all know after their first day, you go home, it's that first phone call you make to your parents or your spouse. You're sitting at the dinner table and you're talking about, well, how did your first day go? So believe me, we're all guilty of it, where we think, okay, this is just something that we have to do, and we cross it off our list. But it's their experience is what matters. It's their takeaway. It sets the tone for your culture and organizational first day experience. Our buddy program and our mentor program is something that we have here within the organization, so we'll be able to talk to you about what we have in place and the things that we do here with our program. And then our ongoing training program that we have, it's different for each employee. We all know that. And so there's the importance of that, of making someone feel they're a part of the culture. And again, it's that power of retaining your top talent. The training is critical. Informal feedback sessions and meetings. This, again, is something where if you want to help retain your employees and taking the time and talking with them and finding out, what they like, what they don't like. Best Places to Work. Those of you that are familiar with that program, you know that if you go out to their website, not only will they tell you the winners and where they landed in the results, but it will also give you little pieces of the good things that happen within their organization. It's like the big takeaways, and we have some things here that we've kind of gleaned from that website that we'll be able to share with you.
And Best Places, Katie, wouldn't you say, not only are they targeting, we focused specifically on small to medium-sized organizations, just, again, trying to take into the audience here today at the webinar, but also Best Places to Work in Pennsylvania also looks at larger companies as a whole. So if you're able to get a copy of this list that Katie's referring to, it is a very great way to just try to glean some of the highlights and best practices across all organizations, regardless of size, within Pennsylvania.
It's a really good point. What we focus on today, looking at our audience, so who is going to be participating in the webinar today, we were trying to make sure that we focused our communication with you based on something that would be meaningful to you. But again, as Suzanne said, they will have not only just the small to medium size, they'll have the large size companies. So it's nice to take a peek and see what the big boys are doing. And then lastly, we're going to focus mostly on stay interviews. This is a piece that Suzanne's really going to speak to.
Yes, this would be a new twist or perspective on how to gain valuable feedback from employees in your company. It seems to be a pretty hot topic and a result of really some information that Katie uncovered when we were looking at topics and a web posting that she did. We do hope that for some of you, while Katie mentioned earlier these topics might be familiar, we do hope to provide you some good perspective and ideas that hopefully you can apply to your organization.
So the next slide that we have talks about PreCulture Infusion, and this really is a great opportunity to pull in your employee and help them be a part of the group before they've even started, and potentially could make new friends at company meetings, trainings, anything along those lines, where by not doing this would obviously be a missed opportunity.
Another good idea is if you have an internal newsletter or some other mechanism in which you communicate regularly with your staff, if you can sign that person up in advance of their start date so that the employee can begin to see what sorts of things are going on and what's up on the horizon.
That's a great idea, Suzanne. And, the other thing that we do here at McKonly is a few days before the employee starts, we send them an email with a couple different things. One of the things is their schedule of what to expect their first week. We send them HR-related paperwork so that they can have that in advance and are not necessarily messing with that their first day. And then we also send them a link to our benefits website where they can actually peruse the benefits in advance. And when they come on their first day, they already feel like they know a little bit more about the organization. Slide 4 talks about the onboarding experience. I got to tell you, Suzanne and I spent a lot of time tweaking this, and we try to look for ways to make everybody's experience be better each time. And as a result, we kind of laugh at this because this is an ongoing process for us. We don't have an HRIS system, so we have to be very, very creative in the way that we make the experience exceptional for our new employees. So in addition to sending their schedule in advance, we send their HR paperwork. Suzanne does a great job when she sends the information about benefits.
Well, thank you, Katie. We all know that benefit-related information is a lot for folks to process and digest, but I think we try our best to make this as easy as possible and allow for them and their family members to just navigate through the different plans that we have and hopefully come prepared with a list of questions. I think it does seem to go well overall at the onboarding meeting.
Yeah, and I think it really helps too because we, by having an agenda, when you're going into these meetings, I know this sounds very simple, but you'd be surprised how you can get off track. And the new employee is just bombarded with so much information. So we find having an agenda with us, kind of like at the side and kind of following that is really great. The other thing that we do is we have a tour where we would either Suzanne and I would give the tour, or maybe at that time we would introduce their buddy and have the buddy take them around. And even if you have a seating chart handy that you can print off, a lot of times the employees really love to have this as using kind of a map, if you will, where it gives them an opportunity to kind of look and see where people are. The other thing that we wanted to mention, too, is we also provide a book for new hires, whether it's an intern or a full-time hire, and it's called Strength Finders. Some of you may be familiar with this, but basically what it is, it's an online assessment that you would take. And so we always encourage people to have about 30 minutes of uninterrupted time because it's one of those assessments that every 20 seconds a new question pops up. And if you're a little bit analytical, it's going to drive you a little batty at first. But what we do with that information is we ask new employees to email us the results. We capture that information, and we use that as an ongoing practice through as the duration of their employment. We also have it set up in our Outlook where on the employee contacts, you'll be able to see everybody's strengths. And so it's nice when we work on teams here, they can look and see what other strengths individuals have.
And just for those of you that are unfamiliar with this process, there are, I can't remember, Katie, if there are over 34 strengths in total. And what this does is it summarizes your top 5. So we're only looking at the top 5. And as Katie was saying, then we try to incorporate that into how we conduct our day-to-day business here with folks, recognizing how we use our strengths in our day-to-day roles and what advantage that could give each of us.
And it's funny, I find often that what we also do is if ever I have a manager that comes to me and says, boy, I'm really not sure what's going on here, something doesn't seem to be right, almost instantly we are grabbing those strengths and we're taking a look at them and kind of analyzing a little bit, and you can see the light bulb go off and say, wow, I didn't even think about that. That makes sense. That is one of their strengths. Slide 5, we like to have a little bit of humor here, and when we saw this picture, we just thought it was so appropriate, knowing some of the characters here at the firm.
These are actual employees, by the way.
Did they sign a form of some sort?
I think they did.
Okay, good. We have 2 programs here. One is called a buddy program, and the other is called a mentor program, and they are different in our world. A buddy here is someone who would be more of like your peer. So we try very, very hard to match up the new employee with someone who has a similar years of tenure here within the organization. And so HR would select that person for you. But a mentor would be something different. And the way that works is we ask our employees in the first 30 days to identify someone to be your mentor, career coach, counselor, you name it. And, immediately this causes the new employee to think, wow, I got to get on a mission and meet some people here. I've got 30 days. And so there's a lot of different underlining threads with this, but at the end of the day, both the programs have been very successful. They kind of morphed into different different things over the years, but at the end of the day, a mentor is really someone that you select, and then you really kind of dictate how often that meeting happens. We find that people that first start, they're meeting once a month, and then after year 1, year 2, maybe it's every 6 months. And, Suzanne, you deal a lot with the performance evaluation, so I'm sure you can speak to that.
Absolutely. In fact, it's not uncommon for folks to change mentors or to seek direction from other folks, maybe outside of their department, as to, who would be, in that person's opinion, maybe a suitable mentor. But it's a great way, as Katie's discussing, to, make that employee feel that they are using the resources to their best ability at work through the buddy program, through the mentor program. The other thing too, Katie, I'm sure she mentioned this, but with the buddy program, the buddy is maybe a soft way for someone to get to know maybe the ins and outs of the company without maybe feeling that they're asking maybe a question that they shouldn't ask. So taking away that maybe reservation, especially for a new employee, how do I work the copier? Why isn't this phone working the way it should? Those types of things. So I think both programs, at least the feedback that we've received thus far from new employees and current employees, they seem to be working pretty well, those programs.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of times what happens is you see in some of the feedback and even the research that we've done, putting this together, that some of the comments that you see that people simply just want to have a buddy program. And if you think about the tangible benefits you get from that, it's just amazing and really didn't cost you a dime. So it might be something to consider. The next slide talks about ongoing training. Study after study shows that your engaged employees are always looking for a way to be better, to learn more, to perfect their specialties. Some folks, depending upon what industry that you work in, you have niches. Some people have certifications. So they are required to keep up with that. But when you have an engaged employee who is looking for ways to make themselves better and to learn more, it's really wise to embrace that. Even here, at McKonly Asbury, we've even talked about putting together a university that actually would kind of capture their learning and they can see on paper their progression. And we do a little bit of that with our performance evaluations.
Absolutely, Katie. As you know, we capture that training data, whether it's soft skills training that they're after as part of their career development plan or CPE credits that they're required to maintain for their professional licensure. We do track, we do track that training over the review period and incorporate it into the review itself.
And it's an ongoing thing. And when we're done doing our training, we get down on our backs and we put our feet up in the air, like in the picture. That's actually some of our people here at McKonly. So all joking aside, we do like to have fun here. Don't get me wrong, but we can't take credit for that photo, unfortunately. But all joking aside, one of the things that we have kind of tracked within the organization is our strengths, as we mentioned before. One of the inherited strengths that we have as human beings is learner. And that is something that, again, if you have your staff that is taking the assessment and you see learner as one of their top 5, pay attention to that, because that's something that will be a hunger that needs to be quenched again and again and again. And if you have an employee with learner and they're not getting it, they may go to another company where they're going to get that infusion of constant learning. So it is something to be wise to and pay attention to. Okay, so I have to say I really like this slide too. Informal feedback meetings. I couldn't resist when I saw this one. But it really kind of captures the spirit of informal meetings. You know, we think, oh my gosh, I have my performance evaluation and the anxiety the night before. But with having the informal feedback meetings, you know, it's kind of like these two frogs. Like, let's hang out and let's talk. Let's kind of find out, you know, what's on your mind.
I like how they're side by side.
Yeah, they look like they're smiling.
Across from a table.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a very good point. So, you know, regardless of what generation you are from, and they, you know, consequently, you know, and I forget the year, but very, very soon we're going to have over 50% of our staff be Xers and Gen Y, and we can't be like the elephant in the room and ignore it. We have to embrace that. And I will tell you, the research is out there. As most of you probably know, feedback is important. It's almost at the top of their list of the number one thing that they look for. And again, if they know that there's an organization where it has that younger feel, the reason why they're saying that is because they can speak their mind openly. They can talk about, you know, what's on their mind, and they're not persecuted, and they feel like, oh my gosh, I said something terrible. Creating a culture where people feel comfortable and having those informal meetings is really critical. And if you don't have it, they're going to go somewhere where they can find it.
Good point. The next slide, we're going to shift here to talk about best practices. And as Katie mentioned before, we looked at what the small to medium-sized companies that made the best places to work in Pennsylvania, what these folks are doing, and looking at the 60 that made the list. These would be companies anywhere from 25 to 250 employees, would you say, Katie?
Yeah.
And so what we did was we extracted some common themes to demonstrate to you today as far as best practices.
So some of the things that they talked about was a sabbatical program where employees can earn extra time off in addition to their regular time off. Employees receive paid day off to participate in company-sponsored events. I know at McKonly we do that. We have the United Way Day of Caring. You're no way made to feel like you have to participate, but should you decide that you can do that and it works well with your schedule, you get paid for that day.
The next bullet point item on there is on-site car washes and detailing. I think that would be a great idea for McKonly to adopt this spring.
I know some young teenagers that probably need some extra cash that probably help out with that. And then there are a lot of organizations that will also do an annual golf outing. I know that's very, very common in public accounting firms, specifically right after tax season. It's usually how they celebrate. Another thing that I saw out there was that companies are getting gift cards where you can actually put your logo on it. And we're actually doing that with our externship program. One of the thank you gifts, maybe I shouldn't mention that, probably let the cat out of the bag on that one, but at the end of the program, we're giving each of the students a gift card. It's a $50 gift card, and it has the McKonly Asbury logo on it. And, again, it's a small investment, but it's a really neat way to do it. Concierge services, and that could be anything, really.
Right.
There's a lot of different things you can do with that. A lot of companies will do the company-wide quarterly breakfasts, where they use that as an opportunity to talk about company goals. I did see a lot of companies that would reward their employees if collectively as an organization that they met that goal, then there would be some kind of a financial thank you that they would receive. And then there's also companies that will provide either free or discounted tickets to entertainment areas. This area is so huge and very family-oriented. And even sports events is another ticket that they like to give away. They also have some companies will do they'll donate their PTO or their disability time. I know with our organization, you earn your annual leave. We call it annual leave. Most people know it as PTO. We had an individual a few years ago that someone that was very close to her had terminal cancer, and she didn't have the PTO time, and some employees came forward and said, "Here, take mine." So that and some companies actually have an official program where they can donate things like that. I did see a lot of the spot rewards, and these were in different increments. One common one was a $25. So if someone would spot you doing something that was above and beyond, you would receive a gift card. And the cool one I think we should do actually is the last one here was the Xbox and the board games and break area. I think that would be really cool because a lot of our folks here have competition as one of their top 5.
So great points, Katie. Great themes, too, that we see across these organizations. And one of the things I want to point out, we're going to talk about this a little later in the presentation, where we talk about identifying what really motivates your employees, based on their values, their interests, their needs. And obviously, these are just some general themes across the board that we're seeing with these organizations that won Best Places. But again, it speaks to understanding your employee population and what one group might prefer over the other.
And as a recap, as we kind of go through this whole process here, we're kind of at the midpoint of our presentation. So to kind of pull everything together, again, we're talking about retaining our top talent, and we believe that starts with in the beginning of including them into the culture before they even start. Having a very well thought out onboarding experience, creating a buddy and mentor program, ongoing training, and then informal meetings, followed by the next topic that we want to go over, and that's stay interviews. This is seems to be a hot topic lately in the HR world. It's something that a lot of us are talking about now, and I'll kick it off to you, Suzanne.
Thanks, Katie. In a recent article that was originally posted by Jackie Valet, and our apologies if we're not pronouncing Ms. Valet's name correctly here, but in this article, she questioned the value of exit interviews. And so the thought would be, instead of focusing on those employees leaving your organization, why not focus your energy on your top performers and high potential employees? The next slide talks about exit interviews and the potential downfalls. The intention of the exit interview is to collect valuable information to make the workplace better for your employees. Not to say that this can't happen, but by nature, the theory is that you've already lost the employee who is sharing the feedback with you. Management, as a result, might be less inclined to take action, and they may even question the legitimacy of the comments, depending on the circumstances surrounding the employee's departure. For those of you who have been part of the exit interview process in your company, perhaps you can relate to some of these downfalls. This is not to say that exit interviews can't still be a valuable process within a company, but the power of the stay interview is that you're trying to catch issues ahead of time and increase retention, particularly for those high performers, high potential employees. Think about how valuable that feedback is when it's shared at a point in time that you can act as a company and respond to your current folks. Another point to mull over, think about how your leadership might respond when you approach them with suggestions or ideas of doing more of what the high performers or high potential employees in your company like, as opposed to trying to sell the leadership in your company on fixing problems or complaints made by departing employees. Quite a different perspective, wouldn't you agree, Katie?
Absolutely.
So, what does a stay interview look like? Well, it's not a typical company-wide formalized employee survey that you might think of. It occurs in an informal manner, conversations mostly without management present. It's meant to be conducted in small groups, over coffee, for example, so it's not viewed as threatening or intimidating to the employee. You're only targeting the high performers and high potential employees. They are more likely to be truthful and honest because they're good at what they do, so hopefully they enjoy their jobs in the first place. Your focus is on the why, as far as why are they staying, as opposed to reasons of leaving that take place during an exit interview. And again, the idea is to catch issues, and you're being proactive before it's too late. For example, again, the exit interview process. Any company wants to attract and retain the best talent. You need to find out what retains your best folks. Consider the strengths of your company and build upon these. Don't be so concerned about the negatives. You're not out to fix everything, and you're not trying to spend energy and resources on things that make the poor performers and those that gripe stick around. You want to do things that make the keepers want to stay.
So as we were starting to plan for this webinar and put everything together, we decided to do a little bit of an experiment. We found the article from Jackie Valet, and we belong to in LinkedIn, there's a lot of subgroups that we're a part of. One of them is the SHRM, the National SHRM LinkedIn group. And I frequent that and, post articles that I think are noteworthy. And unbeknownst to us, we posted this article, and the response was overwhelming.
Yes, as Katie said, the overwhelming response was pretty incredible. We saw a nice cross-section of folks that responded to Katie's post, including the author herself, various consultants, HR folks, managers across other disciplines, and those who have experienced exit interviews firsthand, even including students. So everyone was weighing in quite frequently on this article and post. Some of the comments that we saw, and we have these comments verbatim on this slide here for you. But again, the focus on, focusing on those people who wish to contribute in your workplace was pretty refreshing for the folks that weighed in. As this person also said, the stay interview might be a great way to get to know your staff if you are new to the organization. So again, kind of tying in what Katie was saying earlier about that onboarding process, just taking some informal dialogue in getting to know your staff. The other point, too, that was made here, this person, obviously in the banking industry, this person cites a lot of turnover, and her comment is, exit interviews give the company ideas for what they can do in the future to prevent losing talent, but for employers, they can also be conducting interviews of how to improve employee satisfaction during their employment so the exit won't happen.
And Suzanne, it's funny that you mentioned that, because as you had mentioned before, if there are certain individuals that we identify as we're doing the stay interviews with, they could potentially be a part of your onboarding process going forward, because what a better ambassador would you want?
Absolutely.
So I just really think that's a great idea.
Again, some other comments, the 3 bullet points that you see here, just to buzz through these quickly here. This person said, good idea. Many of us are doing interviews already while people stay in the form of supervisors' regular one-on-one meeting, VPGM dialogue with associates, and HR interviews. But a lot of times we tend to be more focused on potential issues instead of why employees stay. So again, feeling that you're being proactive and focusing on the positives, again, that Jackie Valet was mentioning in that article, but you're focusing on the likes and the positives for that high potential, high performer group. A couple other comments here. Through past employers, I'm constantly hearing the cadence of conversations and statistics on finding versus retaining paying customers. The same holds true, if not much more, for employees. Again, we all know, I think attending this seminar today, the value of retaining your top talent and the cost that your company incurs when that talent walks out the door. So it's much more cost effective to focus on those folks and what is going, right in your organization than chasing those issues.
And Suzanne, we all the time we think about ways that we can do things for our employees, but we're very conscientious about our budgets. And here's an absolute free opportunity, as a wonderful opportunity for management and leadership to identify someone. And immediately you want to talk about employee engagement. It's unbelievable.
Right. And the last bullet point here, again, this person's comment was, wow, what a great preventive action to retain those high performers if the company uses the feedback in improving the way that human resources are managed. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you need to carefully receive and then communicate that feedback back to the employees in your company. Okay, the last slide here with comments. Again, just a couple other great points here. Again, we just talked about this earlier, but the cost of hiring, employing a new employee is always higher than the cost of retaining the existing one. And also another point here, stay interviews can be so beneficial and allow a company to understand what is on employees' minds. It can also help develop behavior changes that might be needed in order to drive the employee engagement strategy. By the time the employee exits the company, in some cases, it's too late. So as you can see from those comments, the power of listening to your employees is paramount. Employees have a need to be heard and see that their ideas and contributions are valued and make a difference. Just as that Chinese proverb lists there, listen to the whispers and you won't have to hear the screams. The other key here, in addition to the power of listening to your folks, would be the power of uncovering what motivates your employees. A couple of comments here. We took this right from the post, but taking the time to talk to your employees, getting to know what they value, their interests, their frustrations. Too often this person says company leadership forgets that employees are also their customers. And this goes back to what we said earlier in the presentation about understanding what really makes your employee population tick. As we saw with the best places companies, those folks do things. Again, these are general across the board measures and programs that they have in place. But again, understanding what drives your employee behavior and flexing to the general needs of the population, but also at the individual level. If you take that time to understand, again, what that individual values, their interests, what is working for them, what's not working so well, then you can make that effort to correct it.
Suzanne, this reminds me of the article that we wrote not too long ago. It was about the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. In that book, Gary Chapman and Paul White were authors, but Gary Chapman actually originated this whole thought through the 5 love languages, which ties into getting to a point where you can show your employee how you appreciate them.
Right, but understanding, again, what drives that person. So this is looking at the individual level, what drives that person's behavior, what they find motivating.
Right. So those languages would be words of affirmation, and this is both oral and written, and it could be used to affirm and encourage those around us. Some people, for example, like it one-on-one, just that private conversation saying, hey, good job. Other people, hey, they want to be on the stage and they want everybody to know that they did a job well done. The second language is quality time. This is personal. It's focused attention with their supervisor, who is affirming that they need that special time. And in an employee, it may be, they just want to go to lunch with you. They want to hang out. Maybe it would be more meaningful as a manager if you would walk into an employee's office and then just sit down and say, how's it going? That to them is quality time. Acts of service is really interesting because what it really kind of gets to the heart of it is assisting an employee to help them get a task done is extremely encouraging to that individual. That would be their top language. So in other words, I would go to Suzanne and I could see she's in the weeds and I'd say, hey, Suzanne, do you need any help with that? Why don't you let me help you with that?
Right. That's a great point, Katie. And actually, I think I have a little bit of that myself because I find it very motivating when somebody can kind of help pitch in. It's that teamwork, that collaboration vibe that I get, and I do find that personally to be very motivating.
And then another language that they have is called tangible gifts. This is key to employees who have this as their top languages, that you not necessarily you have to buy something, but the thought of, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing and you've done such a great job. I'd like to get you something special. Here's a couple different places I was thinking about getting you a gift certificate for. Which one do you think would be more appealing? And so in that way, you're kind of focusing on what's important to them, and it makes them feel special because you got them a gift. And then the last one is physical touch. And I know what you're thinking, but it's not like the 5 love languages.
Talking about physical touch in the workplace.
A red flag. But in this particular situation, physical touch in the workplace would be more like a high five, a fist pump, slap on the back, or shaking their hand, just saying, hey, great job. All that said, it basically rolls up into the book that has the assessment, and you end up getting an MBA. At least that's what they call it. It's Motivation by Appreciation Inventory. And so it will give you your 5 languages, but it will put them in order and according to the importance of that individual. So it's a great tool for managers who are, kind of scratching their head saying, how can I reach that employee? How can I make them understand that I really do care and I want to show appreciation? It's a fun assessment to do, and then it kind of gives you some talking points to talk about. But again, it's really kind of an exercise to help you get to the core of what's important, and that's keeping your employees engaged and helping with retention. But remember, it is something that once you do this, you want to make sure that you use this.
Right, Katie, and we'll be talking a little bit later about that. But also, too, I think just the act of taking the time to conduct an assessment with someone on your team, going back to that previous slide about just, the power of listening to your employees, I think just that alone shows that as a manager, you have your ear out and you're listening, to your folks. So putting this in practice, the next slide that you see would be examples of stay interview questions. At the individual level, if you're a manager, be committed to having these ongoing informal conversations, dialogue with your employees. If you're a leader, then perhaps you can gain support of upper management or challenge those within your organization to adopt this practice. As we all know, it ultimately would require support from upper management if it's going to be a successful program. The following that you see are examples of stay interview questions, and the last point at the bottom where it says why, insert company name, that was actually on that post that Katie saw, where the person suggested that's a great question just to see if why that employee, the reasons that they chose your company are still relevant to him or her. The author that we saw in her article, the author does stress the importance of informal dialogue to tap into those high performers, high potential employees, and find out what really keeps this group. The recommendation is that you would focus on this group first rather than focusing on the whole company. Follow through with this group. They are absolutely the keepers. Not to say it couldn't be rolled out to other groups within your company. Just make sure you aren't biting off more than you can chew. Focus on what this group likes and do more of the same. Managers can have these conversations with their employees during regular one-on-one meetings. It's simple and effective. Other processes that you might consider, perhaps you already have these in place in your company, such as performance evaluations. With the leaders in your organization supporting this process, you can use performance evaluation as a tool to keep these conversations ongoing. You may want to consider more questions to the employee to prompt this conversation, memorialize the dialogue, and formulate action plans. For example, one of the questions that we actually use here at McKonly would be, as your manager, what can I do more, do less, or don't change? Another question would be, how can the organization help you reach your professional career goals? If honest feedback from both managers and employees is being exchanged regularly, then this system is a good opportunity for managers to correct issues before talented employees think of making exit decisions. Finally, two other processes to consider or think about. Perhaps you participate in this, but a formalized employee survey, that's a very good source of data. And actually, the Best Places survey that we participate in, that gives us a good opportunity to kind of peek behind the curtain, see, what specific comments employees are making about programs we have in place or what they would like to see. Again, that's an across-the-board measure. Another thing to think about would be a suggestion box. Do have to make reference here to a couple cautions. One comment that we received that was posted discussed the importance of anonymous feedback, either online or paper survey. So again, pulling the whole employee population and doing it anonymously. Just make sure you give careful thought and consideration to these and other more formalized means of collecting information, because if you don't take action or communicate the results to your employee group, you have the potential to further fan the flames of employee discontent, which brings me to the next point. Before you ask the questions, think about how your company is prepared to respond. One important thing to note, if you're going to ask the question of what can we do better, be prepared to act. Acting and doing nothing is just as detrimental as not asking at all. With commitment from leadership, let employees know the purpose behind the questions, why you're asking, what you plan to do with the information, and that you can't make any promises. At a minimum, follow up with the employees and demonstrate how their information has made a difference. Even more impactful would be to share something tangible. For example, perhaps a work product, a new process, new initiative, program, idea that was a direct result of that person's feedback or group's feedback as a whole. Even if no action has been taken as a result of the feedback, it's very critical that you cycle back to the employees, acknowledging their concerns and reinforcing the importance of ongoing input and dialogue.
So now that we've given you some ideas, here are a few books that we would suggest.
The first book, Katie, as you see, the left-hand side there, Love 'Em or Lose 'Em. That's by Beverly Kay. It's actually called Love 'Em or Lose 'Em, Getting Good People to Stay. In this book, it's a best-selling guide, and it will provide you with 26 strategies to keep talented employees happy and productive. The author cites research and experience with dozens of organizations, and she gives examples of how today's companies have applied the retention strategies and increased the retention rates. Each chapter you'll see in the book, it does include a series of to-do lists, company examples, just some real good takeaways that the author provides. Also, in this edition that we cited here, there are some new appendices. There's a troubleshooting guide, there's a guide to saying thank you in the workplace, and there's also a reading group guide included.
And then the next one, we have Rethinking Retention. Again, we worry about our best employees walking out the door. And this is where Dick Finnegan's new book, Rethinking Retention in Good Times and Bad, is pretty timely. It not only shows you where to look to identify retention problems in your organization, it also guides you through the steps for developing the strategies and tactics tailored to meet your company's specific needs.
And finally, the last book on the right-hand side, The Power of Stay Interviews. This is also by Richard Finnegan. This is a more current book of his, but same thread. This time, though, he dives into stay interviews and using those as a retention tactic. We did talk about this. I would say that hopefully this book could give you maybe some more deep dive information, so to speak. It does explore the value of the stay interview. It looks at it as what we just talked about today, a preventative tool in employee retention that proactively addresses potential issues that affect workplace morale and potential loss of staff.
And this is our last slide. This is actually a quote from Gandhi: "Be the change you want to see in the world." I think that ties out nicely. Don't you agree?
Wholeheartedly, Katie. As a manager, as a leader in your company, if you're able to do things within your realm of authority and affect change and do something positive, either for a group of employees or for one person individually, obviously to hopefully incent that person to stay in retaining your top talent, you should do everything within your power to make that happen.
This concludes our webinar for today. We thank you for taking time and spending time with us. You'll see our contact information on the slide here. Certainly, after the webinar, if you wanted to continue conversations, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll start with questions.
Katie, I'm just going to jump in real quick and give a little closing statement. I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining us for today's webinar on retaining your top talent, brought to you by McKonly Asbury. We will be sticking around for a while to answer some of your questions that have come in, and please continue to submit them or email them to us directly. Katie and Suzanne's emails are on the screen there. As a reminder, you will be receiving CP credit for attending this 1-hour webinar. CP certifications will be sent out via email next week. You will be receiving a follow-up email to this webinar with a short link to a survey about the webinar that we would appreciate your feedback on. We will also be posting a recap of today's presentation on our blog at www.macpas.com/MAnews. Look for that post to be up by the end of the day tomorrow. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to the ladies with a question or two here.
Looks like we have our first question, and it goes something like this. It says, "This all sounds very good, but wouldn't you agree that everything starts with making the right hiring decisions?" And Suzanne probably has some things to say about this too. One thing that I will say that we do agree with that, absolutely. And it kind of starts first with reviewing your job description, make sure that that's not outdated. We want to make sure that everything is, kind of in lines with where the market is. I mean, you think about how the businesses have changed so much in the last 2 years, and is the person you're looking for really matching up with the direction of where the company is going today? And then also too, tap into those star performers that you have. Take a look at the skill set that they have that allow them to be very successful in their current role, and think about those things as you're going to market, so to speak, and look for
a new person for your team.
I would agree, Katie. You definitely want to look at those knowledge, skills, and abilities that your high performers are exhibiting. And to your point about making sure there isn't a mismatch between, what you think you need to hire for and maybe what the market is bearing, or maybe how the business needs have changed over the course of time since you last visited the position. I mean, you certainly don't want to set someone up for failure off the bat. So absolutely, I would agree with this question that, it does start with hiring.
And, and to expand on that a little bit further, there are a lot of great books out there that talk about the best way to hire new employees. One that was just brought to our attention just recently was a book called Hire for Attitude by Mark Murphy. He is also he's known for bestsellers as 100 Percenters and Hard Goals. He is the founder and CEO of Leadership IQ and a top rater providing cutting-edge research for leadership and training. Some of the things that he references in his book is he talks about, through the research that they've done, about 46% of the newly hired employees will fail within 18 months, while only 19% achieve success. And then he also quotes Forbes and Fortune saying that 26% of new hires fail because they can't accept feedback, which I find very interesting.
That is very interesting.
And then 23% fail because they're unable to understand or manage their emotions. 17% because of the lack of necessary motivation to excel. In other words, they're not engaged. 15% because they basically had the wrong temperament for the job. And only 11% because they lacked the technical skills. And then a couple more things, if we can, I'll just share with you that they also determined that there were 4 items that the reasons why people fail in their new roles, and they said 26% lack coachability, which I thought was pretty impressive. And then also motivation was at 17%, which we talked about earlier. Temperament, which is really having the right attitude, and then technical competence.
I think there was another factor that they talked about too. I believe it was emotional intelligence also.
Okay.
Just talking about the ability to understand and manage one's own emotions and accurately assess others.
Okay.
Well, thanks again, everybody. And that wraps up the rest of the questions that we had. So be on the lookout for those emails coming up about CP and about feedback. So have a great afternoon.